Hello MTI members, I'm Tom Morrison. Welcome to another edition of MTI TV. You know, coming out of 2009, there were many who were skeptical about what the future was going to look like in manufacturing and the heat treating industry. Since we made the turn into 2010, our quarterly forecasting company, DeWolf Associates, has raised their projections of what 2010 year-end sales should look like compared to 2009 each quarter 3 times. They were initially projected to be 11%, then 18%, and now they're projecting a 23% increase in sales over last year. This past month, the industry was already up 20% over 2009 sales, showing a great sign of a nice recovery. And looking at the MTI 5-year trend graph that shows a 12-month moving average of monthly sales, I think it's fair to say that if the trends continue, 2010 could certainly be a nice recovery for most heat treaters working towards 2011. The question on many people's minds, though, however, is where is manufacturing headed and what segments are potentials for future growth? The good news is that because you're watching MTI TV today, you're going to find out. Each year, a research firm, McGladly, in conjunction with the National Association of Manufacturers, publishes a study on the future outlook of manufacturing as seen through the eyes of over 1,000 top executives. Today we have with us Tom Murphy, Executive Vice President of McGladly's National Manufacturing Presence, to share some of the important findings from this year's survey. Tom, welcome to MTI TV.
Thanks for having me.
Tom, what did the survey show as of the current business conditions of the industry?
Well, currently the survey indicated that things are in better shape in 2010 than they were in 2009. And we had, when we characterized each of the types of business conditions, we used thriving and growing, holding its own, or declining. And this year, 24% of the companies indicated they were thriving and growing versus 9% last year. And this is a significant improvement over 2009. And 2009 had been the third year in a row of a decline. And actually in 2006, 58% of the companies were thriving and growing. So this is a significant improvement in business conditions for the manufacturing industry. And all throughout the survey, the questions we asked, there was a lot of positive signs and indicators reported by the company that this was going to be a better year and things are getting better. One of the things I make sure I caution companies on a little bit is that 2009 was such a terrible year, and things were just so difficult that 2010 was bound to be better. And as we found in the survey, it's actually better than we originally had anticipated. And if we were to ask the same questions today, I think we'd even find more companies that were thriving and growing. So everything is headed in the right direction.
Are any segments of the industry performing better than others?
Well, there sure were, and this has been a consistent over the years that we've done the survey, is that the food and beverage segment of manufacturing continually performs better than the other segments. Although 2009, there were about 20% of the food and beverage companies reported they were thriving and growing. We improved this year to just short of 50%, which nearly matches the level of thriving and growing food companies in 2008. Followed by food, we have the medical equipment and supplies segment, and that segment had a nice recovery in 2010, where about 36% of those companies are thriving and growing versus about 25% in 2009. Interestingly, people had thought that the medical equipment and supplies industry was insulated from recession, and I think we proved out and found out in 2009 that that's not the case. Even some of the medical services that are purchased, which drive the equipment and supplies usage, even some of those are discretionary, and consumers oftentimes defer some of their medical treatment just because of economic conditions and the ability to pay for those. That was followed by the chemicals, petroleum and plastics industry, which showed a nice improvement to just over 30%, whereas only 12% of those companies were thriving and growing in 2009. We think this is being driven by not only food and medical equipment, but by the transportation equipment segment, and the amount of chemicals they use in that business as well as plastics. And inventories have been driven so low during the recession that they've had some inventory build in that segment. And mentioning the transportation equipment segment, very, very interestingly, in 2010, 27% of those companies in that segment indicated they were thriving and growing versus only 5% in 2009. And interestingly, if we go all the way back to 2006, nearly 80% of the transportation equipment companies, that's really anything with four wheels on it, indicated they were thriving and growing. So that in the severity of the recession really impacted that segment. Of course, we know about that because of what's happened in automotive. But they've had a nice recovery there. If we look at the run rates of production of vehicles in that segment, they're currently running at somewhere around 11 million vehicles, which versus the low they hit at just less than 8 million vehicles in the height of the recession. So there's been some improvement there, and we're starting to see that throughout all the other segments.
Were there any differences in when the recovery would occur based on the revenue range of the companies?
Well, there were, and interestingly, I didn't know for sure if this would say this. It's kind of been conventional wisdom that, larger companies recover sooner and fare better during recessions than the smaller companies. And the survey results really bore that out this year. And specifically, when it comes to those companies that recovered in 2009, as well as those projecting recovery in 2010, those companies that are 100 million and above are projecting recovery in 2010 or in 2009 about 10% more of the time than the smaller companies, which would be those less than 100 million. So what happens is oftentimes maybe the big companies slow down very, very rapidly, which impacts the smaller companies, but they have the ability to rebound sooner. And it's all about the resources they have available to them, their ability to adapt, which some of the flexibility you can have in a larger company is not necessarily present in the smaller. Another key component we found in the survey regarding the larger companies was most of those companies had some sort of global involvement. And what we found is that those companies that were exporting in 2008 into the recession actually fared better than those companies that weren't exporting. And of course, the case being is that the larger companies more frequently export than the smaller companies.
What were the anticipated cost changes reported by the companies for 2010?
I thought that we would probably see maybe a flat level of increase in costs, and by that I mean costs would not necessarily go up very much in 2010 because of the depth of the recession and the impact it had on companies. And what's happening is that we're seeing increases across the board, and this is a little bit concerning to us. And so when we asked companies if they were expecting increases in their costs in 2010, so for instance in their raw materials, 72% of the companies were expecting cost increases in the raw materials versus 37% the year before, which is just a significant change. And then we also noted, for instance, on freight and transportation costs, it was 63% expecting increases in 2010 versus 42% in 2009. And what's happening here is that demand globally is increasing faster than it is here in the States. And as a result of that, we're seeing some commodity price pressure because demand from China, India, some of the South American countries is increasing much faster than demand in the U.S. and Europe. So that's putting pressure on supply, which is driving prices. We also see that reflected in energy costs, which comes out to us in our freight and logistics costs where we see those increases. So we think that the improvements happening outside the U.S. are driving cost increases, and companies were anticipating that. The challenge that we now face is we don't have a lot of ability to raise our selling prices. So we end up being in a margin squeeze, which is really really difficult for us. And the point we like to leave with our clients is that we can't give up the fight on keeping our costs in control, and whether that's further adoption of lean techniques to improve efficiency, minimize inventory, but we have to just camp on our costs like we did through the recession. Just because things are getting better doesn't mean we can let up on that, because our ability to push through price increases is going to be somewhat limited for a while yet.
Tom, thanks for sharing your insight on this very informative report. We hope to maybe have you come speak at our group in 2011 on some of these trends.
Well, that would be great, and we would really like to do that, and I want to thank you, Tom, for having us on the program today.
Members, being informed is the key to making great decisions that lower costs, enhance productivity, and drive your profits. MTI's resource library on MyMTI is packed full of sales trends, economic data, heat treating sales, forecasting models, and industry studies like the one you just heard from Tom Murphy. Log into MyMTI today and start accessing the information that is so key to the strength of your organization. Because you're not just strong, you're MTI strong. I'm Tom Morrison. See you next time on MTI TV.